Hey, mama friends. Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Mama Work It podcast. I am so glad you're here. If you are new around here, my name is Marissa Lonick. I am your host and the founder of Mama Work It, where we support women in the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So I'm super excited to introduce you to our guest today. Her name is Robin Hilmantel, and she is the Senior Director of Editorial Strategy and Growth at BabyCenter. You've probably used BabyCenter before. I know I did when I was pregnant. She has more than a decade of experience in health and lifestyle reporting, writing, and editing. Robin works closely with the research team at BabyCenter to conduct studies with moms that produced impactful reports on important topics like maternal health, childcare, family finances, and much more. The subjects of these research initiatives have included the cost of childcare and waitlist times, the impact of childcare on working moms' careers, which popular Halloween candies are choking hazards for young children, and most recently, in a collaborative survey with Emily Oster, where postpartum support gaps exist for moms after delivering a baby. Robin is also a working mom herself, and I just know is going to have so much to share with us based on her research and personal experience on today's episode. So, Robin, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great. Well, I always love to ask our guests just can you tell us a little bit more about your journey as a working mom and what led you to where you are?
Sure, absolutely. I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I always knew I wanted to have a career. And then when I became pregnant with my son in 2018, I don't know, I don't think I put a lot of thought into how I would, meld the two identities. I delivered him in December 2018 and then just was like blown away by the really like seismic identity shift that happened. This is something we've seen in our research too, that people, moms say all the time that really their identity changes in this very profound way when they have kids. And I think like a lot of moms, when I was on maternity leave and just trying to figure out like, how do I take care of this small human? How do I take care of myself? I was like, I don't know how I'm going to go back to work. And it wasn't because I didn't want to. I really wanted to. But it was just like unfathomable to me how I was going to like hand off my baby to someone else and also just like juggle all of these new responsibilities that hadn't existed for me a few weeks ago. Um, so I would say I had a little bit of a rocky start to becoming a working mom, which unfortunately we know is all too common and experience. But you know what I found really helpful, and I know so many people have, is I read The Fifth Trimester, which was relatively new at the time, from Lauren Smith Brody. I actually am very, very lucky to have worked with Lauren Smith Brody. She worked with me at Women's Health for a little while I was working there, and then had like known of her as a colleague in the publishing industry for a long time before that. And I just found her advice really helpful, and remember specifically she had like one piece of advice, like if you're thinking of not going back to work, just go back and try it first, and you can always leave later if it still doesn't feel like the right decision for you. And so that was very, very helpful for me, especially as I was thinking like, do I really want to pay someone all this money to watch my child when I'm like kind of ambivalent about this decision to go back?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think we can all relate that no matter what maternity leave you are returning from, and I've had three, I think you've had several as well,
Hmm.
it's never an easy transition. And you would think by, your third one, like you'd have this in the bag, but no, each one was really challenging in its own way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have three children as well. And I think the first one for me was the hardest for sure, but it is each one is challenging in its own way for sure. And then you throw in like COVID into the mix. I had
Hmm.
my second son in 2020. And I moved from New York to North Carolina, and there's no like well plotted out like guidebook for this for returning back. I honestly think, obviously at BabyCenter we try to have a lot of great resources for parents. I think Lauren Smith Brody did a great job creating some kind of guide for moms returning to work, but every experience is so different that it's hard to really be mentally prepared for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, how do you see working moms adapting to work postpartum? Do you feel like there's enough support out there? Are there gaps when returning to work? What have you discovered in this research and even just in your own personal life?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely a lot of gaps. And we've done surveys at BabyCenter that look into like what are the policies that moms are most interested in workplaces having that would make them feel really supported in the workplace as a working mom. And we had, benefits like flexible work setups. Flexible hours are among the top benefits that moms say they would really appreciate. And a third of the moms we surveyed even said they would sacrifice $10,000 in their salary for the chance to be able to have more flexibility in their workday in terms of location and hours. So I think that really just speaks to, we see more and more workplaces returning to the office, reintroducing some of that more rigid structure that existed pre-pandemic. And I think that's a real missed opportunity on the part of workplaces to really support these moms.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do think that flexibility piece is really of utmost value to the season that, women are facing when they're in that challenging season of raising little kids,
Hmm.
is the flexibility piece. I know that me personally, that was really important to me when I was in the corporate world. I would have definitely said, here, take this bonus and just give me the flexibility
Yeah.
that I want. Because it's just of such value, and it's a short season, right? It's a short
Hmm.
period of time
Yeah.
when you think about the longevity of your career.
Hmm. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I returned to work with my first son, I was in an office. I was commuting in New York City. I had to like tote all of my pumping supplies because I was pumping. And, sit in my coworkers who were like, this was very sweet of them, but they had made this closet into a lactation room for me, basically. I think a lot of people have had a similar experience. So yeah, I would sit in this like storage closet and pump 2 to 3 times a day, and always be stressed about late afternoon meetings if I was going to make it to daycare pickup on time. Like I remember the first few weeks I was coming back from leave. It was very early on. One of my friends, um, a friend of my husband's and mine, she was in our neighborhood and was like, "Hey, can I stop by and say hi?" And my husband was like, "Is that okay with you?" Like he was home with the baby. I wasn't yet home. And I was like, "No, I don't want our baby to be confused and think like this is his mom." I don't know. It seems so like preposterous saying it now, but like these were the kinds of thoughts and concerns going through my head at the time. And so then, like, compare that to the role that I have now. I'm able to work remotely full time, and there's a lot of flexibility. This is like very, very fortunate and privileged that I'm able to do this, but have been able to hire a nanny who takes care of my infant now in the home so I can nurse throughout the day. I don't have to pump at all. It's just such a far cry from my first experience. And it has really, really made a world of difference in the transition.
I bet. Yeah, the one thing that stood out to me when I was able to transition to working remotely full time was I could bring my children to school and pick them up.
Oh, that's
And those were
huge.
things that I was really never able to do with commuting. I would
Hmm.
leave by 7, I'd be home at 6, and those were delegated responsibilities. And I know, like, it's some days I'm like, oh God, sitting in the car line, complaining to myself. But
Yeah.
I really am so grateful that I get to do that each and every day. I
Yeah.
really am like, and that I have this flexibility in my schedule and what I do now where I make my hours, you know, in and around my kids' hours. I mean,
Hmm.
there's definitely times where I'm working and I need to make sacrifices and things like that. But that flexibility piece is so crucial and important. And it means something different to everyone, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think you made just such a good point that if you look at the span of someone's career, these are relatively a few years. And it's just really, really frustrating that employers don't see that and see the benefit of retaining working moms and finding these ways to provide them with more support.
Yeah. So, do you find that remote work policies and longer parental leave, like there's a direct correlation with benefits to moms and kind of their growth in different industries and just their ability to contribute really, at their utmost level and bring their talent to the table? Is it a direct correlation?
So we haven't phrased the questions in that way necessarily, but we do have some interesting data related to this. So one of the things we found in the survey that we partnered with Emily Oster on is we asked people how much leave, if any, they were able to take, and then we also looked at mental health outcomes. And what we found is that people who took at least 13 weeks of leave following the birth of their child were, I think it was 90% less likely to suffer from extreme anxiety postpartum. So that's huge. And that's something that
Wow.
employers really have a direct ability to say, if they care about the mental health of their employees, to really like carve out that benefit and find a way to, in the short term, it is logistically probably a little bit more difficult for them, but really support the mental health of their employees. Um, and then the other thing that we really find is interesting is that, when you're a working mom, you have to figure out the childcare piece, right? And childcare is a system that in the US is just not supported in any kind of meaningful way, either by the government or by most employers. And what we find is that women are the ones who bear the brunt of figuring out the childcare logistics. It was 80% of moms in our survey said they're the ones in their household that have to figure out those logistics, which can range from anything to like finding a spot in a daycare center to, if there are interruptions for any reason, your child has a fever, most daycares have a policy that you have to be fever free for 24 hours to come. You know, the there it was on average like 3 days a month, a little bit more than that were interrupted because of childcare for most working moms. So that's, just another thing that is really, like, to your point, holding moms back from really, like, in our survey, they said they didn't feel like they could always put themselves up for promotion, or they were turning down opportunities to travel for work or other things that would be, meaningfully enriching their career, because in this survey we were looking specifically at the childcare difficulties and ways that moms didn't feel supported by that system. So it's really disheartening to see that it is really taking a toll on women's careers.
Right, right. Not to mention, I think you mentioned it earlier that childcare costs are so expensive. And I think a lot of women, when they're in that season of debating whether or not to return to work, are crunching the numbers and
Hmm.
are feeling like, is this even worth it? Like, am I only going to net a few $100s a month after, all the bills are paid with regards to childcare and just all the logistics that go hand in hand with that. So, was there
Yeah.
anything that you found in the study related to that as well?
Yes, we asked parents how much they were paying for childcare, and on average, it comes out to about $17,000 a year. So that's a lot. And the
Yeah.
vast majority of parents in our survey said that it was putting a financial strain on their family and impacting their ability to do things like pay down debt or buy a home if they want to. And it becomes a very difficult decision. Do I return to work knowing that the childcare costs are really astronomical. And the wild thing is that even if people do, like they say, they're willing to pay that price, they're able to, there are a huge percentage of families who find themselves stuck on wait lists for daycares. And it was
Hmm.
40% of the families we surveyed say that they encountered daycare wait lists, and the average wait time was 6 months.
Wow.
So there's, obviously the systems aren't talking to each other. It's not necessarily that like you get off the daycare wait list in the same timing that you need for your return to work. So it's just creating all these logistical nightmares that pile up one on top of the other and create this system that is really not supportive for moms returning to work.
Right. And everybody wants, you know, obviously to get their top choice of
Mm-hmm.
childcare, whether that's the daycare that they're waitlisted on or the nanny
Yep.
that's, charging a premium per hour or just is already with another family or whatever the case is. And that makes such a difference that I find too. When you
Mm-hmm.
have peace of mind in your childcare, you can really show up as your best self at work. And when you have the support at work, then show up as your best self at home.
Yes.
And when those two things are misaligned, that's really tough. Like I know I've been in situations where I didn't feel, I mean, I've had wonderful childcare where I felt like completely at ease. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had situations where I did not. And that was really hard too.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've had similar experiences where, you have your child in a situation where that's just a horrible feeling if you're insecure in your childcare and, you're worried about, are they safe? Or, should I not be at work right now? Should I be with them instead? I mean, I remember when we lived in New York and I had my first son, he went to a daycare center there, and um, there's also just a little bit of like coming to terms with what's realistic about daycare. I don't know if you had this experience, but like he started in daycare as an infant. And I remember just like looking at the classroom the first time I stepped foot in it and being like, oh my gosh, all these babies are like sitting on the ground crying and no one's holding them. And I had to kind of like do the mental arithmetic of like, well, there are two teachers in the room and there are 10 babies, or, they cannot be physically held all at once. So I think that was something that I struggled with a little bit too, is like, what is just me needing to kind of come to terms with what's realistic for childcare and what is really a like, a sign I should be like, this situation's not working. We need to find something else.
Right. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you personally,
Yeah.
you're a corporate executive, and I'm curious what really has helped you thrive as a working mom over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the two things that stand out, and we talked about the first one a little bit, is to the extent that you can, knowing that a lot of people don't have a ton of options, like finding childcare you feel great about. My older sons are in a preschool now that we love and they're really thriving in. And I'm very, very fortunate that our baby's with a nanny who, takes great care of him. And it's like you said, when you don't have that worry in your mind, it just frees up so much mental space to, when you're at work, be able to devote yourself really to work. And then I think the other big thing is connecting with other mom friends who work as well. And just there's, all these things that come up, different challenges. And I keep coming back to when I first became a mom and I was like, I literally didn't even know how to use a pump at first. I was like, do people just like hold this to their chest for the 15 or 20 minutes? And it was, another friend who was like, oh, they sell these things called pumping bras. You need to get one. Having those people in your life who you can go to for both like just the emotional connection and all of those little questions to help you find your way in this new uncharted territory.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right. Well, Robin, we are going to head on over to our lightning round now. We're
Great.
just going to ask you some random, just for fun type questions, just to get to know you a little bit more personally. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes.
All right. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I think I'd have to go with flying for sure.
Robin, that is like the number one
Is it
answer
is
on
it
this
too
show.
boring? I'm sorry.
No, it's not too boring. I just find it fascinating that so many people think of that. What makes you choose it?
It just seems really fun to be able to like soar above everything and like it would be really like freeing too and feel so empowering. I mean, I will say this question makes me think of like we like to talk in our family about like what everyone's superpower is, but not in a like hypothetical, superhero way, more in like what we think you're really, really good at. And we always say mine is finding things that other people in the family can't seem to
I can relate to that. Yeah, I bet my kids would answer something
find.
similar.
Yeah.
Love it. What if you could go on vacation tomorrow anywhere in the world? Where would it be and why?
So I would choose Mallorca. Mallorca is where I went on my baby moon with my husband in September 2018. And then between like having kids and the pandemic and just a million things, we haven't gone abroad ever since. Um, and my 5 and 3-year-old are also in a school where they're speaking Spanish all day, every day, which I do not speak Spanish at more than like a basic level. So I think it would be really amazing to like go back there with them and get to really see them using their Spanish in that way while enjoying this beautiful place.
They can be your translators while
Yes.
you're there.
Yes.
What book are you reading right now?
I'm reading Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. Have you heard of it?
I haven't.
Yeah, so Jessica Knoll actually she wrote Luckiest Girl Alive, which they turned into a Netflix movie. She's a very successful author. She also happens to be someone I worked with at Cosmo when we were both in entry level roles in our career. So I love keeping up with what she's doing. My husband's also like, why didn't you write best selling books? But we each have our own path, I suppose.
Well, there's still time, Robin. I
Yes,
mean, you could totally do it.
yes,
And I did see that movie, so now I'm intrigued and want to read that book.
yeah,
Okay.
it's really good so far.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, what is something most people don't know about you?
I am very good at Pac-Man.
Love it. Yeah. Fun fact for the win.
Yeah,
Okay.
not something I get to show off very often, but it's true.
How do you practice? Do you have like an arcade in your house?
So actually, this like kind of circles back to some of what we were talking about. When I went to daycare, there were no, I don't know, it just I don't think was in the ether as much to care about like screen time. And I remember almost like
Oh no, that was
constantly.
not a thing.
No, it
Yeah,
was
that was
not.
not.
They had
Yeah.
a TV on all the time. But one of the other things they had was they had a Pac-Man machine and they had a Galactica machine. So I would just spend hours playing Pac-Man. I don't actively maintain this skill now, but anytime, we go to like a restaurant or an arcade or something with it, I do have to do a round.
Got to show your skills.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Well, please tell our listeners where they can find you, connect with you, learn more about this baby center research and the resources available.
Yeah, so BabyCenter, we like to think of ourselves as your partner in parenting. It's primarily an app, so I definitely recommend downloading it for iOS or Android. And everyone thinks of us as that app that you download that says, oh, your baby's the size of a blueberry this week. Now you're up to the size of a peach. And it does do that. And we love how much expectant moms like that functionality. But we also are doing a lot of things. We're doing all this research that we talked about today. We are offering advice on different topics, including childcare, like how to find childcare that you will be comfortable with and that fits with your lifestyle. So you can find that all on the app. You can find it at babycenter.com as well. And of course, we're on all the major social media platforms. Our handle is always Baby Center. So you can find us there as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Robin, and for sharing all this really helpful information.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.